Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our November Customer Connect webinar. This is Michael McDermott, the Director of Customer Success, or Service rather, pardon me. And I'm very excited to be joined by our product team for today's session. I'm joined by our Vice President of Product Management, Eric Tranley, and by our Lead Product Manager for our Fraud Cockpit solution, Chris Ferrer. Today, Eric's going to be updating you all on our vision for fraud analytics through the Fraud Cockpit, and Chris will be providing a live demo of the solution. The product team will also be taking your questions, so please enter your questions into the question window at any time, and we will answer those questions live. Without any further ado, please take it away, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Maybe some of you have already seen some demo of Fraud Cockpit, but more importantly today, what I would like to share with you is our inroads into fraud analytics, and give you a little bit of a hint on the roadmap going in the future. Fraud analytics is, if you wish, a higher level of fraud detection, and one could say that right now our product line is about fraud detection and enabling prevention at the alert management and case management level. Fraud analytics will give you the ability to understand the efficiency and efficacy of the current fraud detection, as well as the case open or closed. But more importantly, it is about data analytics on all the alerts that the financial institution has been exposed to. So what it does mean is we do have a mind goal of data cross institutions that we are now preparing to analyze and give you insight about the fraud aspect of it that could be either shared within the team for efficiency and efficacy reason, and this is what we're going to show you today with Fraud Cockpit, but later on you could share within your peers. In other words, because of the ability for us to understand at large the customer segmentation, in other words, where you fit according to your assets, the type of fraud you have been exposed to, we will be able to do peer benchmarking on the fraud side. And as you can see, as we're able to aggregate those data and give you more insight into it, it will become a tool not only from a productivity standpoint, but also from a prevention standpoint, so that you could be proactively alerted on any new fraud coming down on any kind of channels by the ACH, wire online, or mobile, and have a more proactive strategy to go about. Now, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Chris that will walk you through the first, let's say, the first chapter of this fraud analytics with Fraud Cockpit that it gears towards fraud productivity management.
Awesome, thanks, Eric. So with this kind of first look at kind of the initial Fraud Cockpit, this tool here is meant to be interactive and really give you kind of actionable insights for fraud management teams and executives on operational efficiency, team productivity, and resource optimization. And so after speaking to a lot of customers and hearing what are some of the pain points they've been feeling around reporting on fraud, around kind of the monetary value, whether that's communicating to other executive teams, to specific, say, developers in your platform, or auditors. And that it many times is a very manual kind of rote process where you have to utilize spreadsheets. It can be error-prone at times, and it doesn't really kind of give you a quick look at what's going on up to date. So you need to have an analyst or someone kind of pulling together all of these reports, and it can be really time-consuming and not necessarily the best use of their time. So with that in mind, it really motivated us to find a way to provide these actionable insights in kind of one pane of glass, have flexibility, and give you KPIs from the beginning. So all customers receive the out-of-the-box dashboard, what we're kind of looking at now, and we'll dive in a bit. But so you can hit the ground running. There's no need to kind of turn all the knobs, but you kind of come away with something out of the box that's really helpful. In addition to that, this is kind of a first taste of kind of the omni-channel view, where you can see all of the products from Guardian Analytics that you subscribe to. So whether that's ACH, Wire, Business, or any combination of them, you can see them all at once. In addition to that, we've been chatting with Gartner and Forrester and their analysts and hearing, what is their feedback, what is their opinion on the product, and we've heard that they're really strong and positive in kind of seeing this tool as something that's really helpful in the fraud analytics space. So kind of like Eric was saying, we really see this as a means to really increase operational efficiency, giving you a holistic view, whether that's one product, all your products, really being able to dive deeply into your alerts and cases, so getting into that granularity. In addition, this can help you really ensure customer trust by enabling executives to more effectively combat fraud. So how can I take these insights and really shape my fraud strategy and allocate resources so that we're ensuring that we're preventing and detecting as much fraud as possible and ensuring that our customers are having really great experiences with our financial institutions. This also helps me understand, my team productivity. What are they working on? How fast are they getting through these alerts? How can I highlight their success and best allocate their resources? And thinking about this kind of single pane of glass, how can I quickly get insights since I'm, very busy, working on a lot of things in terms of triaging fraud and many times wearing many hats. So how can I utilize and leverage this quickly and easily so that I can communicate the impact of our fraud prevention strategy? So some of the key capabilities are, measuring that amount of fraud and thinking about, benchmarking. What are our goals? Are we meeting them? Are we exceeding them? And how can I easily communicate this with peers so that we can really celebrate our wins? In addition to that, monitoring the high-risk alerts. So really being able to dive into what are those red and yellow alerts and address trends and surges that might not be, the norm that we see. This also allows me to see kind of the caseload, the alert load that my fraud team is experiencing. It also helps me evaluate by product what are the kind of key metrics. We're seeing, say, for example, not a lot of fraud in Business, but maybe we're seeing more fraud in Wire, and we'll want to kind of think about why is that. And so that's kind of, analyzing those fraud attempts by channel. So at a high level, some of the key capabilities here are this out-of-the-box dashboard so that you can really, hit the ground running, like I said, knowing that you're going to want to have flexibility around presenting data in different formats, especially for different audiences. You have the flexibility to export this data in a CSV, in a PDF, in a nice image, so that you can communicate as efficiently and as effectively as possible with teams and with auditors. In addition, there's the ability to drill down so that you can really ask questions of the data and see what's going on. This data is fresh, so you make sure that you get kind of, up-to-date views of what's going on in your system. Also, there's a rich amount of filterability where you can, change the time period. Say I just want to look at June or specific products and analysts. And knowing that high-performing fraud teams have specific use cases and well-known kind of business processes that they have in place that enable them to detect a high level of fraud and really prevent fraud, we know that you're going to want flexibility in terms of the reports and data that are most important to you. And so thinking about that, we really wanted to make Fraud Cockpit customizable so that it can meet your business needs. So why don't we dive in and look at Fraud Cockpit? So here we are in Fraud Cockpit, and so we kind of have broken it up into 3 levels. So at the top here we have the financial kind of area, so that's fraud prevented and fraud loss. And then below that we have operational kind of metrics. So looking at alert volume to case status and case category so that you can really get the pulse of fraud kind of coming in. And then on our far left side, one of my favorite charts that I'm really excited about is being really able to highlight the great work that our analysts are doing and understand their workload. So why don't we kind of dive in and kind of talk about, what is each chart and report kind of telling me and helping me as a fraud manager or executive really understand and make decisions upon. And so firstly, we have Fraud Prevented here. And Fraud Prevented allows me to really see the trends in the fraud that we're preventing, the success and goals that we're meeting, and specifically across specific products, what sort of fraud or how much fraud are we seeing at any given time. So this is really helpful in that it lets me see, based on specific products, what's going on, what is that monetary value, and then at a kind of a total level, for the last, say, 3 months, we have seen about $3 million of fraud that we've prevented, or should I say closer to $4 million, which is really fantastic. And we've seen that across 235 instances. And so this really helps me kind of, take into consideration how effective we're being, what is the workload that we're seeing, and when are we seeing this fraud? Is it, on a monthly basis? Is it on, let's say Monday or Tuesday, we're seeing a lot more fraud, so that I can really communicate across teams that we collaborate with in terms of triaging these cases, in working these cases, and making sure that other teams that we might have to collaborate with know that Mondays and Tuesdays are going to be a little bit higher in terms of workload, and so that we're all, kind of working as smoothly together as possible. In addition to that, you can see the total amount of fraud. And so this total amount is the combination of fraud prevented and fraud loss together, so that I can see across the board the total amount of confirmed fraud that we're seeing. And so, taking fraud prevented, we really see, our goals and things like that, but we also see here with fraud loss the amount of instances of fraud that have kind of maybe fallen through the cracks, those instances where we have lost maybe some monetary, some money, or that we know was fraudulent activity. And so this is helpful to see, identify what are those cases where something, might have gone wrong. What can we do to make sure that we're detecting them better and working them? Or are there some kind of, anomalous things that we're seeing that we don't really have a great grasp on? And how can we really tackle that so that we better understand them and can better work them in the future? And then from a Guardian Analytics perspective, we are always taking this information in and looking at how can we better detect fraud, how can we kind of feed these instances in and better train our models, and really giving you kind of that up-to-date as fraud is changing kind of view of fraud. So always working to kind of improve and take into consideration new signals of fraud. So moving over to the kind of operational area of Fraud Cockpit, we are looking here, first off, at alert volume. And so alert volume allows me to see at a high level, what is those numbers around total alerts that I'm seeing right down here, to the subset of those. So, for example, with flag suspicious, that is red and yellow alerts. How many, I can really see that ratio or that kind of subset or cut of risky alerts that we're seeing. Great to see that's a lot smaller than that larger number below. And then also, for me at a glance, to see how many alerts have my analysts viewed. So I really want to see that, these flag suspicious alerts are getting viewed and getting acted upon at a high level at a quick glance. And if they're not, I need to check in with my team and see, how are things going? Is there maybe a spike? So right here, we can kind of see there's some, peaks and valleys. And so what's going on here, right? Are they getting a lot more work than they normally do? And what can I do, say, to build a case, whether it's, needing more resources or better allocating my team's time based upon the products that we're seeing, for example, that have more fraud coming up. So, right here, we can kind of see how these charts interact with each other in the sense that I can see, we're not seeing so much fraud in mobile, but we're seeing, more in wire and business. So I'm really going to want my analysts to prioritize those sorts of products. And also take learnings from, say, mobile and business. Maybe they're a little bit similar in some senses. And how can I make sure that my analysts are going through processes that are similar in that we've seen success in different areas? And so one of the nice things, kind of as we were talking about this rich level of filterability, is that I can really kind of dive into the specific pieces of the chart that are important to me. So for example, if I just want to look at view by analyst and flag suspicious, I can easily kind of, hide away the total alerts and be able to see that kind of combination of view by analyst and flag suspicious. So here I can see, the gaps, I can see, as they match. And so that's really, really helpful for me. And so kind of taking into consideration, say, these kinds of spikes, say on 10/6, it allows me to, see when is that happening, and say on that day on 10/6, I really want to follow up and kind of see, how many red, for example, alerts do we have. I obviously want my analysts to prioritize those red alerts first, and then get to yellow. And depending upon my kind of fraud strategy, if my team reviews green alerts or specific types of green alerts, that they get to those afterwards. And so looking at this and, thinking about, so let's see, we have 10/6. I want to make sure that, throughout the day, what's going on, keeping a pulse of my analysts' work, and seeing, how many have they dismissed, how many cases have been created for this day, and really following up and making sure that they have the tools they need to be successful in triaging this fraud. And so the nice thing is I can kind of jump over to this case status chart. And so, for example, I could kind of get granular to that 10/6 day so that I can follow up with my team and see, how many cases have been open for that day, how many cases have been closed, and how many are currently open. So currently open is all of the cases, whether it was today, depending upon how I would like to filter, but it could be, the last couple of days. I want to make sure I know how many total cases are open, and that my analysts are getting through those. And then one of the nice things over here is that I can really see the spread of those cases. So I can see how many cases are not fraud. It's great that we see a larger amount are not fraud. But then we can kind of dive into, how many are fraud lost, how many are unclassified, and how many are default entry. So making sure that my analysts are categorizing cases with the proper stat or resolutions, so that we know where kind of our cases stand, where we are in terms of fraud, and identifying, say, those unclassified or default value ones, so that we know, maybe there's something about this that we feel like there's some data or information missing. How can we fill that gap? How can we, better categorize these instances of fraud? And speaking of kind of categories, looking at case categories allows me to see kind of where did these cases derive from? Where are we seeing kind of this anomalous activity? Is it from new activity? Is it unusual activity for this specific account? Is there some sort of email fraud that might be going on? And so really being able to kind of categorize and understand what's going on in terms of our alerts, in terms of the risky things that we're seeing. And so then jumping over to the fraud team chart, we can see the productivity of my analysts on a kind of more individual level, allowing me to see, what's going on, say, with Bernard, how is Jean doing, and seeing, kind of across the board what they're kind of getting done, whether it's creating cases, closing cases. Maybe there's some newer people on our team like Courtney, and we want to make sure that someone like Bernard or Jean, who are doing really great, have opportunities to really mentor and help her see the best practices that they're employing to really be successful in triaging fraud. And so, these are just kind of a taste of some of the charts that we're really excited about for Fraud Cockpit as a way to really gain, important and actionable insights around fraud, and really giving the ability to kind of customize and kind of dive in to meet your business cases. And so one thing I kind of wanted to jump into was kind of this kind of moving towards kind of new functionality for Fraud Cockpit 2. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of customers is questions about more around case management, and thinking about how long does it take for my analyst, for example, to open a case, or from opening a case to closing that case. So I have a better understanding of say in terms of days. How long does it take for us to work cases? What are those cases that might be taking longer than usual, say 8 days, and maybe I want to follow up and see what's going on, as well as if I want to get on a more hourly basis to see how long are specific cases taking. And maybe if there's some similarities between those cases that take longer, so that we can really identify those trends, so that we can move that time lower and figure out how we can meet our goals and kind of constantly improve. And so this is something that we're looking towards as kind of, as we tier and come up with new dashboards in the future, from, more case management to more of the discover and blending and understanding kind of benchmark data. And so one quick thing I kind of wanted to talk about was some of that kind of customizability. And so what we, one of the nice things with Fraud Cockpit is that you can really kind of dive in here and change things so that you can see data in ways that are really insightful and really helpful for you. So, whether that's having a horizontal bar graph or changing it to, something as simple as just a vertical bar graph, but there's like a rich level of customization in terms of seeing charts in different ways so that you can make, really actionable, really fast insights.
Okay, thank you, Chris. As you can see, like a 360 for the fraud management team to understand from the fraud alerting to how to analyze the efficiency of the fraud detection. And as you can see, we're using a BI framework that allows you truly to exploit the very rich visualization. And one of the benefit of it is, as fraud is mostly about layering, right? Fraudster will layer a lot of things so that you don't understand. But with those rich capability of visualization, as you can see the last heat map, you are able really to construct a visual that will allow you to dive into it. So having said that, I think we can open the Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. So we've got a couple questions from the audience. And so, Chris or Eric, first question we have is, what are the prerequisites for the fraud cockpit? What do I have to have to use the fraud cockpit?
Yeah, so to use Fraud Cockpit, you need to subscribe to at least one Guardian Analytics solution. So for all of you who are our current customers, that shouldn't be a problem. But if someone was new, if you have one product, you can use this dashboard. And it gets really exciting when you have more than one product, and you kind of compare and contrast where you're seeing fraud, and really get a taste of that kind of omni-channel. So that's all that you need.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next question I've got here. Will I be able to get customized or new reports that aren't on the existing dashboard?
Yes. So one of the nice things with utilizing a really great BI framework is that there is a rich level of customization. But understanding with this rich level of customization, it can kind of be difficult at times, or there's a lot of advanced functionality that you want to take advantage of and leverage. And so the nice thing that we're going to be providing is some professional services to really help you optimize and take full advantage of the capabilities that this business intelligence tool provides. So that's a great way to take full advantage of it. And in addition to that, as we kind of move forward, we'll be coming out with kind of new tiers, new information, new data, and new insights that you can take advantage of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Got one more question from the audience. Can I create team-specific or solution-specific dashboards, such as a wire dashboard or an online banking dashboard?
Yes. So from the kind of current dashboard, you could say just filter for the specific dashboard that you wanted to see, or should I say a product that you wanted to see. So a good example right now is I can select, say, just wire right here, and then I can set up a default so that whenever I log in or specific individuals log in, they always see just wire, so that there's no need to kind of dial around or toggle every time you log in, but that you can easily set it up so that the most important products or data or information is at your fingertips. In addition to that, you could create a dashboard that is specific for certain analysts. If you wanted to, say, remove certain widgets and things like that, there is that functionality.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And that brings us, I think, to the conclusion. I don't have any more questions from the audience. So, Chris and Eric, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate you coming and sharing this with our customers. I think this is an exciting advance for what we can do and what our fraud managers who are leading the teams will be able to do with our solution. And I'm very excited about this.